Hey guys, tonight we begin our exploration into the lives of enslaved individuals in ancient Greece. This period, which spanned from around 800 BCE to 300 BCE, presents a stark picture of human existence at the mercy of the powerful. In ancient Greek society, slavery was a common practice. One of the early sources mentions that slaves could make up to 1/3 of the population in some city-states. These individuals often found themselves in harsh conditions, stripped of freedom and agency. Many were captured in warfare or born into servitude. Their experiences vary, but notable hardships are well documented. As the light breaks over a small, unadorned dwelling, the day begins. Many enslaved individuals reside in simple quarters. These homes consist of 1 or 2 rooms. Thick mud and straw make up the walls. The roof is thatched, providing limited protection from the changing weather. Doors consist of rough-hewn wood. They often lack locks, serving merely as a barrier. Sunlight filters through cracks in the walls. The air is cool and carries an earthy scent. One stirs under a thin blanket of wool. This wool is coarse and does little to retain warmth. Nights are often chilly. The first awakenings occur slowly, with fatigue lingering in limbs. Many do not sleep well. The day does not begin with comfort. One opens the eyes to a dim room. There is no clock. Time is measured by the sun's position. The sounds of the household begin to stir. A soft rustle of clothing implies movement. One rises from a makeshift mat on the wooden floor. The mat is made from scraps of fabric, worn and faded over the years. Hunger tightens the stomach. Food provisions are scarce. According to historical records, breakfast may consist of stale bread and a bit of olive oil, if available. This meal is accompanied by a small quantity of olives or figures. These fruits are common and easy to preserve. One reaches for the thin woolen tunic hanging nearby. The tunic is simple, made from coarse fabric. It lays loosely on the frame. Foot coverings may be absent. Bare feet touch the cool floor. They will carry one onward, pawing at the rough earth shortly. There are no personal belongings of value. A few items may exist: a small wooden bowl, a simple tool, or a woven basket. These objects serve practical purposes. They hold no sentimental value. The thoughts of luxury or comfort feel distant. Hygiene practices are rudimentary. One may splash water onto the hands or wash the face with a cloth. Bathing is infrequent. Water sources can be distant. According to scholars, many slaves rely on nearby fountains or streams. The water is often cold. Soap is a luxury, crafted sometimes from animal fats, if available. Work duties start early. One knows not what awaits each day. Tasks vary depending on the master's whims. Some may work in fields, others labor in homes, or even tend to livestock. An enslaved person might fetch water from a nearby well or brew pots of porridge. The physical demands are great. Hours feel endless. Historians note that young boys and girls often begin working very early. The responsibilities handed down often include childcare. The children of the household require attention. Little ones demand constant care, taking time away from other tasks. As the sunlight rises, one may hear the sounds of the nearby market. Merchants call out, advertising their produce and wares. This is a foreign world of both excitement and longing. The busy marketplace contrasts sharply with the stillness of one's own room. The air fills with smells of baked bread and strong spices. Lentils might simmer in pots. Fish are often dried, prepared by skilled hands. However, these aromas often drift by unrecognized. The enslaved worker does not partake in the vibrant life outside. Their world is confined to performing duties. Toil is their existence. One anticipates the comments that will come from the master or mistress of the household. The slightest mistake can lead to reprimands. The beatings or public humiliation are a constant threat. Fear lingers like a shadow. Simple conversations are few. Respect for one's thoughts is rare. Dialogue mainly revolves around commands, requests, or disdain. The lack of autonomy weighs heavily on the mind. Enslaved individuals live with the knowledge that freedom is but a dream. As the morning progresses, the demands of the day grow heavier. One may take a moment to gaze outside. The fields stretch out, full of crops ready for harvest. Farmers toil under the sun, their faces marked by years of labor. They enjoy a freedom which remains out of reach. One's heart aches with longing. There are moments of togetherness. Occasionally, enslaved individuals gather to share news or a brief laugh. This companionship provides moments of relief amidst their struggles. They speak quietly, aware of the watchful eyes of the masters. The heat of the day starts to ascend. The sounds of nature blend once more into the routine. Insects hum in the underbrush. The sun's intensity increases. Sweat begins to bead on the brow. This is a sign of the work that awaits. And now, slowly, one begins to rise from the mat, preparing for what comes next. As one rises from the mat, the coolness of the stone floor becomes apparent. Each footstep sends a chill through the body. The space is dim, lit only by the early rays of sunlight creeping through small openings. Careful not to disturb those still asleep, one tiptoes toward the basin of water. The water feels frigid against the skin. A sense of rejuvenation accompanies the splash of the liquid on the face. Basic hygiene routines are a luxury amidst the demands of the day. One may wash hands, face, and perhaps a quick scrub of the arms. The cool water is refreshing, yet fleeting. There is no time to linger. Duties await. Upon finishing, the scent of the damp cloth clings faintly in the air. It is rough, woven from local materials, adding an extra level of discomfort to the morning. One dons a simple tunic made from coarse fabric, a blend of wool and linen. This garment offers no warmth, only modesty. It is designed for utility, not comfort, fitting snugly against the skin. There is no choice in attire. Each day begins with the same rough woven tunic. Once dressed, the next task becomes apparent. The kitchen area beckons. One approaches the meager supplies left for breakfast. Rations often consist of barley porridge, simple and unadorned. A bowl of water may be added for a smoother texture. Stale bread remnants linger nearby, a far cry from hearty meals. Each morsel is substantial yet unappetizing. The notion of choice does not exist, every piece is a necessity for survival. The master's household, or that of a wealthy patron, dictates the meal dynamics, ensuring a distinction between their diets and that of enslaved individuals. As breakfast is prepared, the aroma of fresh bread, out of reach, fills the air. It is a reminder of a life just beyond the threshold of the enslaved existence. One quietly chews the porridge, savoring the simple textures, relying on the familiar ritual. It is bland, a monotony to start the day. Each spoonful is a reminder of the contributions made to the household, the labor endured to sustain someone else's comfort. Still, this must be endured with acceptance. After breakfast, it is time to fulfill daily responsibilities. The bustle of the household begins to increase as the sun rises higher. The door creaks as one steps out into the narrow corridors of the household. The sound of soft footsteps pad quietly across the ground, a consistent rhythm of life that continues unchanging. The day begins in earnest. One might sweep the areas of the house, collecting dust and debris. The tasks are often tedious and physically demanding. At times, a colleague may join to share burdens and conversation. Words are exchanged in harsh tones. The watchful eyes of the household are always present. Stepping outside, the brisk morning air greets with a hint of warmth. The environment is alive with the sounds of daily life. Merchants compete for attention in the markets, calling loudly to entice patrons. Children's laughter filters through nearby lanes. The vibrant sounds punctuate the otherwise somber routine of existential labor. Each journey undertaken towards work requires a level of endurance. The streets may seem alive, yet they symbolize confinement. The vibrant displays contrast sharply with the restrictions felt. The walk to the fields or the workshop is often several kilometers. The heat of the sun begins its slow ascent, prompting sweat to form beads on brows as one navigates the crowded paths. Vendors shout their deals, calling out the price of olives and figs, which remain tantalizingly out of reach. With each step through the busy marketplace, one cradles tools or goods essential for the day's labor. The burden weighs down. The feet may begin to ache from the constant motion. As one approaches the designated job site, the landscape becomes clearer. In Athens, the landscape opens to reveal terraced farms full of ripe crops. The sun casts a golden hue over the fields. The beauty is striking, leaving one with a bittersweet feeling. The realization remains that this beauty comes with labor's toil. The agricultural load often rests on slave shoulders. Arriving at the worksite presents a variety of tasks assigned. Field slaves may spend the day planting, harvesting, or tending to livestock. Domestic slaves might prepare meals or clean living spaces. Craftsmen could carve stone or assemble pottery. Each labor comes with its own physical demands. Calluses form from repetitive motions. Muscle strain becomes an all too familiar sensation. Interaction with overseers is a constant factor at the worksite. Masters often survey the work with watchful glares. Their commands echo with authority. Punishments for shortcomings loom large. Heavy hands are equally quick to strike as they are to reward. The pervasive threat hangs in the air, becoming part of the daily rhythm. A sharp command may cut through the air like a whip. Each response is a careful balance of submission and compliance. The presence of authority creates an environment where silence is valued. Speaking out is dangerous. Instead, one learns to read the subtle signs, the shifts of mood from overseers or fellow laborers. As the day unfolds, one may experience fleeting moments of connection. A shared glance with another slave can serve as a small respite from the oppressive atmosphere. Small whispers of shared anecdotes, laughter, or gossip emerge sporadically. They cling to these exchanges like lifelines. Even in brief moments of lightness, the shared existence highlights their collective struggles. As the heat of midday bears down, the work persists. The sun reflects harshly off the surfaces. A slight pause may be stolen among the toil. It is in this small reprieve that memories of family and friends surface, a distant reminder of lives once close. The sensation of sweat drips down, mingling with the dirt that clings to skin. The mouth becomes dry, as water is often rationed. One remembers those moments of shared laughter, conversation softly pressed against the lips. The contrast between the lightness of spirit and the heaviness of duty can be jarring. With time, the sun begins to lower in the sky. Shadows inch their way longer across the fields. The working hours grow short for the day. One may begin to prepare for the conclusion of the day's labor. A quiet relief begins to replace the pressure of the work. A horn may sound from a nearby shop. As the day wanes, the atmosphere shifts once again. The market continues hum with activity, signaling its vibrant life during the cooler hours. Emotions stir, longing takes hold as thoughts drift toward the end of the day. Yet the routine does not allow for leisurely thoughts. The close of day is marked by another round of chores. Though labor ceases, the responsibilities do not. Meals need preparation once again. Curious smells waft through the air, heightening one's senses but leaving the palate yearning. The evening brings with it a familiar feeling of exhaustion and alertness. One must navigate through the fading light to set down tools and prepare the meals. Evening brings togetherness among enslaved individuals. They share stories of the day, recounting tasks completed and burdens carried. The moment is fleeting yet vital. As the sun sinks below the horizon, the activities of the day coalesce into a rhythm continuing through the twilight hours. One might feel the pull of weariness take hold. Tasks draw to a close, despite their lingering weight on the shoulders. Enslaved individuals gather under the dim light, spare moments rounded together in feel, sound, and spirit. They encapsulate life's moments, bound together by the shared experiences of labor, struggle, and a fragile sense of community founded in distant hope. Now, with the dark sky blanketing the land, the glow of the stars above offers a secret respite from the day. Little by little, acceptance of the struggles weighs in. Acceptance that tomorrow will hold the same endless repetitions, the same labor, and the same search for joy amidst the struggles. As night begins its embrace, one settles down again into the familiar territory of the mat. Enslaved individuals close their eyes, bathed in the remnants of the day. Another cycle awaits. The day this time blending into sleep, bringing a quiet promise of tomorrow's return to duties and labors unchanging and eternal. Now, we turn our attention to the range of duties that awaited each enslaved individual on a daily basis. The spectrum of labor performed within society offers profound insights into their struggles. Each task carried its own burden, enhancing the complexity of their existence, colored by the society which bound them to servitude. As the first light of dawn breaks the stillness, the enslaved individuals rise once again to the stark reality of their existence. This is a life defined by routines, where each day mirrors the last. They shuffle on the cold, stone floors, the chill sending shivers up their spines. The sensation of dampness lingers in the air, a testament to the night's humidity. The sun, a mere sliver on the horizon, casts soft shadows that dance around the cramped quarters. In this dim light, the fabric of their tunics is a rough reminder of their social status. The woven fibers graze against their skin, itching slightly, clinging to the memory of the day ahead. Each garment is a mark of their servitude, a standardized uniform of labor. As they prepare for the morning, the sounds of shuffling feet echo within the enclosed space. Voices, low and murmured, exchange quiet greetings, even amidst the shared burdens. Each individual knows that solitude is a luxury rarely afforded. Connections formed within these walls are vital, yet they remain silent shadows of friendship, tinged with the awareness of their plight. With limited time for personal hygiene, the basin of cool water becomes a ritual in itself. They gather around the shallow vessel, splashing the crisp liquid onto their faces and hands. This brief moment of refreshing coolness stirs them into awakeness, washing the remnants of sleep from their eyes. Water, though cold, carries an invigorating sensation, a fleeting gift from the morning. Next, the mundane task of preparing breakfast awaits. Simple, scant offerings line the makeshift table, barley porridge, made from water and the coarse grains that fuel their labor. Each individual knows the taste too well. It falls flat upon the tongue, lacking any sweetness or variety. Some find remnants of stale bread, crusty and hard, its edges no longer soft. Others may nibble on leftover scraps from the elite's meals, remnants that were deemed unworthy for the more privileged. In this early hour, the sensation of hunger gnaws at their insides. Whispers of their shared plight hover amongst the rising steam from the hot porridge. The lack of choice marks a grim reality. Each day begins with it, a hunger not just for food but for dignity, for a semblance of control over their own lives. They eat in silence, each individual mindful of limiting the portions they consume, knowing that what remains will be rationed for the next meal. Once breakfast is concluded, the transition to the next phase of their existence begins. Each enslaved individual dons their coarse tunics, the fibrous texture scratching against their skin, a physical reminder of the roles they are confined to play. They secure the fabric with makeshift belts or ties, little thought given to aesthetics. The act of dressing becomes a mechanical process, devoid of deliberation. With minimal time to gather oneself, they prepare to leave the constraints of the quarters. Exiting onto the cobbled streets of Athens or Sparta, they become part of the thrumming heart of urban life. The early sun shines high overhead, yet its warmth is a distant comfort. The city awakens fully, and the sounds become a multicolored tapestry of life. Merchants, already vocal with their cries, invite buyers to consider their wares. Animals bray in their enclosures, a cacophony of sound blending into the surroundings. Children play in nearby lanes, unwittingly highlighting the innocence of youth against the heavy backdrop of adult struggles. Stepping through the busy streets, each enslaved individual bears the burden of tools or goods, strolling towards their assignments. Weights hang heavy on their shoulders, a myriad of instruments waiting to aid the day's labor. Bundles of materials and tools shift uncomfortably in their arms. They navigate through the throng of passerby, their eyes downcast, conscious of their place within the hierarchy. For many, the journey to their designated worksite spans several kilometers, a trek filled with fatigue before the day's tasks begin. The streets, bustling with life, become a harsh reminder of the divisions within society. Enslaved individuals creep along edges, their presence often relegated to the margins, invisible amid the swirl of citizenry. The sun climbs steadily, casting brighter light upon the city. As they walk, the physical strain begins. Muscle and sinew warm under the labor of travel. Each step grinds against their bodies, a reminder of the long hours ahead. Pain, an unwelcome companion, settles into their bones. Finally, the appointed workplace comes into view, a field, a workshop, a domestic household. Each space reflects the nature of the work they were assigned to. In fields, the aroma of tilled earth greets them, mingling with the overhead heat. In craftsmanship workshops, the clang of tools on stone and wood resonates within the air. In domestic settings, the scent of warmth from prepared meals hints at the existence of another world, one they serve but cannot enter. The nature of the labor varies significantly, reflecting an incredible array of tasks assigned based on skill and circumstance. Some endure the sun's harsh rays, tilling the soil for countless hours, their hands raw and calloused from the relentless grip of hoes and plows. Others find themselves in homes, tasked with sweeping, cooking, or taking care of children. The incessant oversight of overseers drives them relentlessly. The clink of a whip or the sound of a reprimanding voice echoes in the back of their minds, an ever-present threat looming. Days blend under the weight of labor, tasks interspersed with occasional moments of camaraderie. Discussions among the enslaved weave quietly through the air as they work, sharing whispers of gossip. Despite the overseer's watchful eyes, these subtle interactions foster a sense of community. Quiet laughter may erupt or a shared glance may hold solace. In these moments, humanity prevails, even within the coded confines of servitude. Time drags, each second marked by the rhythm of manual labor. They wrench their bodies into compliance with the demands required, each task performed for both survival and the hope of maintaining social bonds. The repetitive strain of work enchains their spirits, yet within that same structure of toil exists the fragile threads of resilience. As the sun approaches its zenith, the work intensifies. No longer can work be done with ease. Hours pass by in muted frustration, the vision of freedom grows dimmer under sweat and dust. As grievances and laughter intermingle, the emotional burdens also unravel, existence steeped in a struggle altered by the presence of peers whose fates are forever entwined. Now, as the sun begins to dip lower in the sky, marking the passage of time, the harsh labor comes to a halt for a brief respite. Shadows elongate upon the ground, the light casting a warm glow over the tasks completed. The air carries an impending sense of evening, subtly whispered amongst those still toiling in the fields or within workshops. A moment of quiet descends momentarily, fragmented as sounds from the city continue their frenetic pace. The enslaved listen closely, attuning themselves to the familiar rhythms of the surrounding life, even amidst their struggles. They gather themselves to rest, if only for a brief while amid the burden of labor. In a different corner of the city, other enslaved individuals continue their tasks in households, relentlessly preparing for the elite's grand meals or domestic duties. The kitchens bustle with motion as smells of prepared dishes fill the air, contrasting with the blandness of their own rationed meals. Ovens burn brightly, readying for the elite's evening sustenance. Yet the lives of the enslaved in such domestic settings remain shadowed by an unyielding expectation. Any failure to meet chores leads to swift repercussions. Their existence is tied more closely than ever to their ability to please their masters. The overhead watch of vigilance constrains them, an oppressive shroud that inhibits the very breath of freedom. As labor draws to a close, the horizon begins to shimmer with the hues of twilight. The familiar sounds of the city transition, but the enslaved individual's community remains steadfast in their resolve. They recount the moments shared, the trials of labor, whispering stories of resilience that transcend their conditions. Now, with the falling darkness, reflections of the day's experiences settle within their minds. The demanding rhythm of life has not abated. As they prepare to return to their sleeping arrangements, the united force of shared labor bonds them more tightly, transcending their individual struggles for a brief moment, offering comfort in shared identity and enduring hope. And as they draw near the twilight's embrace, the shadows that blanket the earth foreshadow a new day on the horizon. The cycle of labor, struggle, and persistence anchors them in a rhythm unbroken, a testament to the truest spirit that refuses to be extinguished by their circumstances. Now we turn our attention to another aspect of daily life, the different types of work duties assigned to the enslaved individuals. The spectrum of labor reveals the intricate relationships between various roles, showcasing the stark divides and responsibilities that shape their existence within the framework of ancient Greek society. The responsibilities of enslaved individuals in ancient Greece were vast and varied, determined by the nature of their ownership and the demands of their masters. As the day progressed, the enslaved found themselves engaged in a multitude of tasks, each calling for skill, endurance, and compliance. The roles of field workers, domestic laborers, and craftsmen illustrated the intricate divisions of labor within Greek society, showcasing the harsh realities that shaped their daily lives. For many enslaved individuals, mornings meant heading out to the fields, where they toiled under the relentless sun. The land was often unforgiving, requiring constant attention and care to yield even minimal crops. Fields of barley and wheat stretched far into the horizon. Here, they harvested the grains with simple tools, such as scythes and sickles, creating a symphony of metal clashing against stalks. The sound resonated through the vast fields, echoing the hard work demanded by the seasons. Others found themselves serving in the households of the elite. Within these confines, the nature of labor contradicted the physical demands of the fields. Domestic roles included cleaning, cooking, and child rearing. Each responsibility was governed by an unyielding set of expectations. A domestic slave would be up at dawn, ensuring that the small comforts of elite life were maintained. Cooking was not merely about preparing food, it was an art demanding precision and skill, with no margin for error. The kitchens flared with the heat of ovens, infused with aromas that hinted to the glorious meals awaiting the elite, while the enslaved often faced meager portions of whatever scraps remained. Craftsmen made up another critical facet of the enslaved workforce. Some had skills that were highly sought after. They were trained in various trades, such as pottery, metalworking, and weaving. The workshops, bustling with activity, allowed these enslaved individuals to exert a form of creative expression, albeit within constraints. Tools lined the walls, gleaming in the afternoon light while the rhythmic sounds of chisels and hammers filled the air, a stark contrast to the silence that often enveloped others in laboring roles. Interaction with overseers marked the days of enslaved labor. Taskmasters kept a watchful eye on productivity, often leading with harsh measures to maintain control. Whips and verbal reprimands served as constant reminders of the consequences of inadequacy. This environment encouraged a culture of fear and diligence, compelling enslaved individuals to perform without error. Each task had to be performed with efficiency, as failure could lead to punishment, a chilling reality embedded in their labor experience. Throughout the day, the physical toll of labor bore heavy upon them. Calloused hands bore witness to the tasks endured, sore muscles tightened under the strain of endless work. Water, often rationed, was a fleeting respite. Shade was a luxury many could only dream of. The sun beat down relentlessly, especially during peak summer months. The feeling of sweat-soaked tunics hugging against skin led to an ever-present discomfort, stitched into their monotonous daily routines. As work duties unfolded, the social fabric between the enslaved individuals emerged in unique ways. Despite the oppressive specter of authority, these individuals found solace in shared experiences. Conversations were often hushed, their eyes cast downwards to avoid the gaze of overseers. Gossip circulated about the elite, snippets of their lives forming a collective narrative of grievances and aspirations. Within these challenges, small glimmers of camaraderie arose. Whispers of stories, laughter, and shared frustrations forged bonds between individuals who otherwise may never have crossed paths. They gathered, albeit briefly, exchanging tales shaped by a world that viewed them as property. These moments formed the basis of a culture that resisted erasure, highlighting the shared humanity of those ensnared in the bonds of servitude. The rhythm of labor persisted, with days blurring into weeks. Seasonal changes dictated the nature of work, but the roles of slaves remained constant. Agricultural seasons arrived and departed, yet the core strivings of enslaved lives continued unbroken. The turning of the year shaped their labors, with some periods yielding more fruitful harvests than others. Still, each time the sun rose, individuals readied themselves for the labor ahead, adjusting to the cyclical demands of life as best they could. Evenings offered a reluctant reprieve from the day's toils, but they did not herald relief. The walk home was often punctuated by the weight of exhaustion, limbs heavy and minds clouded with the memories of labor. Arriving back within the confines meant preparing for the grind to continue anew, dusting off remnants of the day's responsibilities while facing the unknown demands of tomorrow's labor. As the day came to a close, the enslaved individuals settled into their sleeping quarters once more. The cold stone floor greeted them, a familiar discomfort that lingered without reprieve. Conversations diminished as fatigue washed over them, eyelids growing heavy. The communal space echoed with the sounds of shared breaths, a rhythmic reminder of the collective existence entwined through shared struggle. In this manner, life for the enslaved individuals in ancient Greece persisted, through unrelenting labor and solemn solidarity. The social roles they occupied were rigid and defined, yet the indomitable human spirit subtly resisted. Their stories entwined with hardship, demonstrating resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity. Thus, a new day awaited on the horizon, an echo of the past entwined with the rhythms of time. The weight of expectation, both from within and without, would shape yet another chapter in the ongoing saga of their lives, as they prepared to rise and face the new dawn, the cycles of labor, before them yet again. Now, let us reflect on the social interactions that occurred amidst this strife. One's existence within the confines of slavery involved not only labor but also the need for connection with others, navigating a world rife with tension and the constant specter of punishment. Social interactions among the enslaved individuals often unfolded in cautious whispers. At the first light of dawn, one would observe gestures exchanged among fellow laborers before the day's burdens beckoned them towards their toils. These brief moments of connection served as lifelines in a world defined by oppression and harsh realities. Conversations were held with furtive glances, the subdued tones only affirming the shared understanding of their confined existence. Eyes were frequently downcast, avoiding the penetrating gaze of overseers whose presence loomed over communal gatherings. The atmosphere thrummed with an underlying tension. One could almost hear the unspoken fears transmitted through silence. In such oppressive conditions, even a simple exchange could carry significant weight, the intimacy of their situations binding them in a manner that transcended spoken language. Yet, even in moments characterized by restraint, camaraderie emerged. As they endured the indignities together, the enslaved individuals formed networks of mutual support. Shared laughter, albeit hushed, occasionally punctuated the atmosphere. Phrases passed back and forth, each play on words capturing a uniquely painful yet resilient humor about their circumstances. Finding solace in such interactions proved vital, as it not only lightened the emotional load but also served as a reminder that they were not alone in their suffering. Among these exchanges, news would travel, often distorted yet infused with a sense of urgency. Whispers of punishment or even escape routes could become topics of quiet discussion. Like ripples in still water, rumors of rebellion or acts of defiance occasionally reached their ears. In these exchanges, one could sense the mixture of hope and fear. With every distant cry or thud, unease seeped back into their conversations. Yet, these exchanges illustrated the enduring spirit of community, a modicum of resilience threaded into the fabric of their daily lives. Interacted through a framework of oppression, the social landscapes were further complicated by the constant surveillance of those in authority. This scrutiny created a climate of fear, inhibiting the development of deeper bonds. While some individuals authored clandestine gatherings, striving to maintain a sense of identity and culture, others remained too cautious, consumed by the anxiety of reprisal. This persistent atmosphere of uncertainty shaped their interactions, leading to a fragmented existence where connection was both cherished and feared. This dynamic often stretched into their work duties. In the grueling hours as labor unfolded, opportunities for communication remained limited. The moments stolen between labor were rare. An overseer might abruptly descend, ensuring productivity remained the paramount focus. These interruptions reminded them of the fragility of their situation, the oppressive weight of authority that hovered at all times. In this environment, interactions became transactional, often devoid of warmth. During the quieter breaths of work, the enslaved individuals relied upon subtle storytelling practices. Oral traditions mingling among them contributed to a shared heritage. Fables, with moral lessons cloaked in allegory, were recounted softly. From the depths of their struggles, they drew these tales. Stories illustrated the virtues of wit over raw strength and the inevitable downfall that awaited those who betrayed trust. Each retelling served not only as entertainment but also as a means of preserving individual and collective histories. Many tales echoed themes of resilience, caution, and hope, reflecting their lived experience. These mythical figures often navigated treacherous waters, resonating with the daily reality of those sharing the same social constraints. In this limited scope of creativity, narratives allowed their voices to momentarily rise above their positions in life, transcending the reality of their enslavement. As the day wore on and physical fatigue set in, so too did the weight of emotional strain. Bonds forged through shared adversity became both a source of strength and heartache. The highs and lows of connection emerged distinctly, illuminating the contrast between fleeting joy and lingering sorrow. The emotional currents ran deeply, and interdependencies among them grew. In their shared labor, whether tilling the soil or crafting goods, certain unspoken tenets of loyalty emerged. This sense of mutual responsibility defined their existence. By the day's end, individuals returned home, navigating the well-trodden paths of exhaustion. Occasionally, the resonance of shared breaths grew into subdued discussions around the fires, recounting the day's trials and tribulations mixed with anticipation for tomorrow. Conversations would often stretch into the night, merging into a collective hope that persevered despite the crushing reality. It was in these moments that laughter would break through once more, a powerful testament to human resilience against despair. Amidst the whispers of camaraderie, one figure transcended the ordinary fabric of their lives. Aesop, the storyteller often regarded as an emblematic figure of fables, reflected the complexities intertwined within the institutional framework of ancient slavery. His own narrative bore witness to the life of an enslaved individual who, through the power of words and tales, navigated the treacherous landscape of oppression. Aesop was believed to have been born around 620 BCE in Phrygia, a region in present-day Turkey. He came to Greece after being traded, entering a world rife with intellectual pursuits. Despite the limitations imposed upon him, his storytelling abilities flourished. He integrated into the elite circles of Athens, sharing stories that transcended social boundaries. These fables became the means of his liberation, a powerful vehicle transforming his subjugated existence into one of influence. The essence of Aesop's fables contributed significantly to ancient Greek culture. His tales conveyed moral lessons that resonated beyond the confines of his time. Known for cautionary themes, his narratives often highlighted the injustices of life, allowing the oppressed to momentarily escape the harshness of their existence through reflective storytelling. In these respects, his legacy is intertwined with the discourse surrounding slavery in ancient Greece, illustrating the profound connection between cultural expression and societal critique. This brief glimpse into Aesop's life prompts further exploration of his impact on the society from which he hailed. Analysis of specific fables reveals deeper messages regarding social inequalities that resonate with the experiences of enslaved individuals. Take, for example, the tortoise and the hare. The moral of perseverance over arrogance parallels the daily struggles faced by enslaved individuals striving for dignity against overwhelming odds. Furthermore, historical context illustrates the precarious position of slaves within the intricate tapestry of Greek society. As mentioned, the treatment of enslaved individuals varied widely across different city-states. Accounts indicate that some cities practiced a more humane treatment compared to harsher practices observed elsewhere. The institution of slavery remained firmly ingrained within the social and economic structures, complicating the narratives that emerged around it. In examining narratives of Aesop's contributions, one must not overlook the broader historical landscape of slavery within Greece. The diversity present among social hierarchies and the roles defined within these structures offers significant insight into the lived realities of countless individuals. The Helot revolt in Sparta, for instance, exemplified the tensions between enslaved persons and their oppressors, demonstrating resistance and the desire for autonomy embedded within their struggles. This revolt, occurring around 464 BCE, marked a moment of significant rebellion in response to the oppressive systems that governed their lives. Such instances resonate profoundly, linking back to Aesop by reiterating the themes of power, resilience, and hope within the broader story of slavery in ancient Greece. By examining individual tales, one can ascertain how they reflected not merely personal anecdotes but rather resonated with the collective pain and aspirations of those within the confines of subjugation. In order to paint a comprehensive portrait of the experience of enslaved individuals, scholars often turn to archaeological evidence. Excavations in various regions have unearthed relics indicative of enslaved lives, providing a tangible connection to their daily existence. Historical misrepresentations have obscured these realities, emphasizing the urgency to re-evaluate and acknowledge the diverse narratives that populate ancient Greek history. The examination of artifacts and communal structures illustrates the harsh living conditions faced by many, shedding light on the multifaceted lives of those often marginalized in historical discussions. In summary, social interactions among enslaved individuals in ancient Greece were a blend of cautious engagement and resilient camaraderie. Through the threads of storytelling and shared experience, these encounters significantly fortified their existence against the backdrop of relentless oppression. As they navigated their roles in society, the legacy of figures like Aesop further complicated the narratives of slavery, revealing connections between culture, morality, and social constructs. Each interaction, however fleeting, became a means to both endure and transcend the weight of their circumstances. Thus, as the narratives weave into the broader complexities of enslavement in Greece, they offer a reflective lens through which one can observe the interplay between oppression and resilience, illuminating a shared humanity amidst adversity. Now, we turn our attention to the biography of Aesop. His life unfolds against the backdrop of a world that shaped his narratives and influenced collective thought in ways still reverberating today. Aesop was said to have been born around 620 BCE in Phrygia, an area in what is now modern-day Turkey. This region was characterized by its rugged terrain and ancient traditions. Aesop's early life remains largely ambiguous and shrouded in myth. Some accounts describe him as a physically deformed individual, belonging to a lineage that experienced hardship and strife. The conditions of his youth likely contributed to his later acumen for storytelling. Historical records suggest that Aesop was sold into slavery at a young age, transported across the Aegean Sea to the bustling shores of Greece. This was a transition from a somewhat simpler existence to the complexities and bustling nature of city-states like Athens. Aesop's fate as a slave set the stage for a life that would balance servitude with the deeply ingrained cultural practices of imparting wisdom and moral lessons through fables. Aesop was noted for his keen observations of life around him, both in the noble and common spheres. Scholars indicate that during his time in Athens, the context for storytelling was ripe. Public gatherings and educational institutions thrived as citizens engaged in the arts of rhetoric and drama. Notably, from approximately 570 to 510 BCE, Athens emerged as a center of intellectual discourse. In this climate, Aesop's narratives began to encapsulate societal insights. While working for his masters, Aesop would become adept at discerning human behaviors. He observed daily interactions among the elite and the common populace, noting the nuances of their interactions. His experiences unfolded within a complex tapestry of class distinctions, where he witnessed firsthand the disparities between his existence as a slave and those of wealthy Athenians. Throughout the years in servitude, Aesop's talent began to shine. He gained recognition not only for his storytelling but also for his ability to craft moral fables that emphasized values of justice, compassion, and cleverness. These fables often featured animals as central characters, allowing Aesop to explore human conditions without directly confronting societal norms. The fable of the tortoise and the hare, with its moral about patience and perseverance, reflects this device. Aesop's notable achievements, however, did not come without their challenges. His life took a significant turn around 546 BCE, when he reportedly found himself in the company of the powerful and wealthy. It was during this time that Aesop supposedly met a series of influential figures, including the philosopher Solon and other prominent citizens. These interactions provided the groundwork for his potential liberation, as his wit and intelligence garnered attention. Several accounts document his unique contributions to the elite discourse. Aesop was invited to various social gatherings, where he captivated audiences with his stories. This shift not only demonstrated the potential for slaves to rise in status through intellect but also emphasized the social mobility that lay within the systems of Athenian culture. It is estimated that by 540 BCE, Aesop's reputation flourished, opening doors that previously seemed impassable. As he continued to navigate through society, tales of Aesop's cleverness and insight spread. Not only was he seen as a storyteller, but he also emerged as a voice that challenged existing ideas about morality and justice. His fables reflected real-world dilemmas, using simplicity to convey powerful lessons. The classic fable, "The Boy Who Cried Wolf," warned of the repercussions of dishonesty, teaching listeners about trust and credibility. A turning point in Aesop's life came around 564 BCE, when he was granted his freedom. Such acts of liberation were not common, and this transition marked a significant achievement in Aesop's narrative. Freed from the constraints of slavery, Aesop then used his platform to flourish as a storyteller. He began to travel throughout Greece, sharing his fables in public assemblies and forums. The last decade of Aesop's life marked a period of increased influence. His stories resonated with the complexities of human nature and societal conflicts. Through them, he highlighted injustices, critiquing the ethical landscapes of both the common and the elite. The breadth of his storytelling echoed throughout the Athenian democratic environment, during which significant political and social changes were taking place. The exact circumstances surrounding Aesop's death are often debated. Recorded accounts suggest that his life met a tragic conclusion around 564 BCE, under somewhat mysterious circumstances. Some historians claim that he fell victim to mob violence in the city of Delphi. It is noted that a dispute arose, possibly triggered by his sharp wit or social commentary that offended certain elites. Aesop's legacy persisted even after his untimely death, his stories continuing to be told for generations, teaching moral values and social insight. The narratives attributed to Aesop survived through oral tradition, eventually transcribing them into written form by later philosophers and scholars. This transmission of his fables reveals the impact he had on intellectual thought well beyond his lifetime. His influence opened dialogues about the nature of freedom and humanity, echoing through centuries as society continued to grapple with issues surrounding power dynamics and ethical treatment. In tandem with Aesop's tales, the societal portrayal of slaves in ancient Greece began to surface through literature and discussions among philosophers. By examining the life of Aesop, the complexities of slavery are accentuated. His story serves not only as an individual account of resilience but also as a medium through which broader societal critiques were voiced. As we reflect on Aesop's impact, we can also explore the cultural dimensions of his fables. These narratives were not merely entertainment, they were crucial in shaping moral philosophy and ethical considerations in a time marked by rigid social stratification. The crossing of boundaries between slave and storyteller became a pivotal example of the transformative potential inherent within lived experiences. Now we shall delve deeper into the cultural ramifications of Aesop's fables. We will explore the ways in which his narratives impacted society and continue to resonate within the realms of moral philosophy. Aesop's fables, numerous in variety, served significant roles in both entertainment and didactic lessons. His tales often presented situations that reflected human behaviors and revealed underlying moral lessons. These narratives combined storytelling with practical wisdom, making them crucial in the education of both children and adults. The simplicity of his characters, ranging from cunning animals to wise humans, allowed for easy identification and understanding of complex ideas. The fable The Tortoise and the Hare, for instance, portrays the concept that slow and steady effort can triumph over natural talent when paired with overconfidence. Such stories encourage humility and persistence, essential values within a society reliant on communal cooperation and mutual respect. His stories often emphasized the paradoxes of life, shedding light on the truths that could be uncomfortable for society to confront directly. Indeed, Aesop's narratives transcended the boundaries of entertainment. In their essence, they mirrored the societal structure of ancient Greece, where the dynamics of power and the treatment of the oppressed were part of the populace's daily consciousness. His work contributed to dialogue concerning social justice, portraying the struggles of the marginalized, including enslaved individuals who craved agency and recognition. The narratives offered lessons that could inspire thought, reflection, and perhaps, a change in perspective regarding one's treatment of others. As Aesop's stories proliferated through oral tradition, they transformed, adapting to the cultural conditions that different societies faced over time. The fables reached beyond Greece, influencing a myriad of cultures and literary traditions across generations. Roman writers, such as Phaedrus in the 1st century CE, and later medieval storytellers employed Aesop's style, embedding moral lessons within allegorical tales. The echoes of Aesop's storytelling can be observed within a variety of fables across cultures, demonstrating the universal nature of his messages. Scholars note that the societal impact of Aesop's fables can also be linked to the philosophical inquiries of his time. Philosophers such as Socrates, who lived from 470 to 399 BCE, and Plato, with his writings spanning the 4th century BCE, often pondered the ethical structures of society. While their dialogues primarily focused on ideals of virtue and justice, Aesop's tales provided a more approachable medium for disseminating similar ideas among the common populace, including those who may have been enslaved. The final years of Aesop's life, from approximately 574 to 564 BCE, were marked by an undertone of intrigue and cultural significance. Yet, Aesop's legacy does not solely rest on his stories, it stands in a broader context of societal reflection. His fables were not isolated literary works but part of a continuum that examined the relationships between power, slavery, and personal autonomy in ancient Greek society. The narratives continued to serve as a critique of human behavior, bringing to light the failings of those in power while simultaneously providing guidance to those navigating their subjugation. This intersection of storytelling and social commentary allowed Aesop to leave an indelible mark on literature and philosophy. Even as new ideas and discussions emerged, the roots of Aesop's reflections on society remained present. Understanding the cultural implications of Aesop's fables requires placing them within a wider framework of historical narratives. The integration of morality within stories illustrates how ancient cultures grappled with concepts of virtue often juxtaposed against the backdrop of slavery. This cultural narration creates a rich understanding of how the enslaved found solace and strength in communal stories. Aesop's impact extended beyond mere fables, cultivating a legacy that intertwined notions of inheritance and moral philosophy with significant cultural critique. His stories have lived on, evolving to meet the needs and values of subsequent societies. The threads of Aesop's wisdom are woven into the fabric of philosophical discourse, encouraging profound reflection on humanity's moral compass. As we transition from the examination of Aesop's influence and the narratives he put forth, it is important to consider the broader historical context concerning slavery in ancient Greece. The tales Aesop told reflected a society deeply entrenched in the realities of enslavement. Therefore, it is imperative to investigate the general conditions under which this institution operated, its relationship with economic structures, and how societal attitudes towards enslaved individuals were shaped within this framework. The historical context surrounding slavery in ancient Greece plays a critical role in further understanding Aesop's experiences as a slave and the messages encapsulated within his fables. This exploration will illustrate not only the immediate experiences of enslaved individuals but also the enduring repercussions of those systems of oppression that have resonated far beyond ancient times. The overarching historical context of slavery in ancient Greece reveals a society heavily dependent on the labor of enslaved individuals. While Aesop stands as a remarkable figure of resilience and creativity within this oppressive structure, his life cannot be viewed in isolation. It is necessary to delve deeper into the systemic conditions that framed the experiences of enslaved people, including their varied treatment across city-states, their roles in society, and the legal frameworks that governed their lives. Slavery in ancient Greece existed across multiple forms, evolving from earlier practices in the region. The fundamental socio-political organization significantly shaped the lives of slaves. For instance, in Athens, an intricate system allowed elites to maintain property and wealth, relying substantially on the workforce provided by enslaved individuals. It is recorded that by the 5th century BCE, estimates suggest that as many as 1/3 to 1/2 of Athens's population were enslaved. Individual roles ranged from domestic servants to field laborers, demonstrating a hierarchical structure that categorized lives within the confines of slavery. In particular, the treatment of slaves varied markedly, influenced by differing city-states, such as Athens and Sparta. In Sparta, for instance, the Helots were a subjugated population who provided agricultural labor for the Spartans. They lived in a constant state of oppression and were often subjected to brutal treatment. The Helot revolt, which took place around 464 BCE, exemplified the repercussions of such oppression. The revolt emphasized the tensions between enslaved populations and their oppressors, demonstrating that while many slaves were expected to peacefully endure their circumstances, there were significant stresses that could provoke rebellion. In Athens, the nature of slavery was somewhat different. Slaves could occasionally earn money for their labor or achieve a form of limited agency. However, even in such cases, the overarching system kept them enshrined within a social structure that regarded them primarily as property. This aspect of Athenian life is reflected in the writings of philosophers and playwrights of the period, who echoed the sentiments of societal acceptance regarding the subordinate role of enslaved individuals. The legislation governing slavery provides insight into the legal and punitive structures surrounding enslaved lives. Legal documents from the period indicate that slaves were recognized as property, with owners possessing the authority to impose severe punishments for infractions or perceived disobedience. For example, specific laws recorded by the legal reforms under Solon around 594 BCE highlight that while there were limited protections against severe physical punishment, the legal framework overwhelmingly supported the interests of slave owners. The concept of a slave's liability in causing financial damage to master property exemplifies the total commodification of enslaved individuals. The grim reality was that any rebellion or act of defiance could result in swift and harsh repercussions, including death. Additionally, the documentation regarding the lives of enslaved persons reveals that their integration into cultural and religious practices was limited. The records indicate that slaves participated in religious festivals mostly in roles that reinforced their subjugated status. While public religious ceremonies in Athens were grand and inclusive, the enslaved attended only to serve the needs of their masters, reinforcing the social divide present in everyday life. Reports from various sources, including historical figures like Xenophon and Aristotle, present a grim portrayal of slaves, dehumanizing them through observations that emphasized their utility rather than their humanity. It is clear through their writings that such perspectives shaped public attitudes about slaves, contributing to a socio-cultural environment that deemed equality unattainable and inherent inferiority acceptable. The intersection of societal norms and economic dependencies kept slavery at the forefront of ancient Greek civilization. The philosophical discourse prevalent at this time only served to entrench the status quo, suggesting that the conditions of enslaved individuals were natural and necessary for the flourishing of a refined society. This normalized structure is indicative of how the exploitative nature of slavery was rationalized and perpetuated. As we transition into discussing Aesop himself, chronicling his life provides additional complexity to this overarching narrative of slavery and its implications on both individuals and society at large. Aesop, reputedly born in Phrygia around 620 BCE, encapsulates the potential for personal achievement that could occasionally arise even within the bounds of slavery. Though his early life is shrouded in ambiguity, it is understood he was traded to Greece, where he would eventually navigate the complexities of an enslaved existence, leaving an indelible mark on literature and moral thought. Aesop's storytelling ability and the fables he crafted not only entertained his contemporaries but also served as a form of subtle resistance against the oppressive circumstances surrounding slavery. The impact of his fables rests within their capacity to address human behaviors and social injustices while simultaneously highlighting the moral dilemmas inherent in the institution of slavery. The often anonymous origins of his stories have allowed them to persist across the ages, reshaping perceptions of morality and ethics in subsequent cultures. His narratives resonate against the backdrop of an Athenian society entrenched in dependency on slave labor, offering profound lessons drawn from both human struggles and shared experiences. Aesop's fables provided a voice that transcended the immediate plight of slavery, a cunning means to expose injustice without directly confronting the system that enabled it. Furthermore, while discussing Aesop, it is crucial to consider the specific fables that embodied the essence of social commentary. His stories, such as The Tortoise and the Hare and The Boy Who Cried Wolf, are not merely whimsical tales. They carry moral lessons applicable not only to the elite but also to the enslaved population. His clever use of animals to portray human behavior allowed him to critique societal norms with a sense of anonymity, effectively communicating the harsh realities of life through allegory. In summary, Aesop's life and contributions must be viewed within the broader context of ancient Greece, a society defined by its reliance on slavery and intricate social hierarchies. Throughout his journey, Aesop transformed personal suffering into universal truths, making observations that would persist long after his death. His legacy is intertwined with the philosophical inquiries of his time, echoing the realities of power dynamics and moral consciousness. As we prepare to explore the final years of Aesop's life and his eventual death, it is essential to acknowledge the lingering impacts his narratives imposed on societal views of morality and slavery. In doing so, we gain greater insight into the complexity of his existence and the resonance of his messages, which continue to provoke thought and reflection even in contemporary discourse. With this understanding, we will turn our attention to Aesop's departure from life and the legacy he left behind, shaped by the inseparable link between his narratives and the struggles faced by enslaved individuals throughout history. Aesop's last years were marked by a significant transition in his life as he navigated the complexities of being both a storyteller and a former slave. This period, from approximately 570 to 564 BCE, reveals not only his personal experiences but also highlights the broader societal context of slavery in ancient Greece. The tension between the oppressive realities of his existence and the cultural impact of his fables unfurled quietly in various aspects of Aesop's life during these years. Records indicate that Aesop spent considerable time traveling across various city-states in Greece, likely visiting places such as Delphi and Corinth. It is during these travels that he is said to have honed his craft of storytelling, sharing his fables with both commoners and elites alike. These tales circulated widely, often performed in marketplaces and gatherings, where they found receptive audiences. The simplicity and wit embedded within Aesop's narratives allowed them to resonate, forming a bridge between his previous life as a slave and a newfound recognition of his intellectual contributions. Throughout this time frame, Aesop engaged in dialogues with prominent figures in society. Historical accounts mention his interactions with the philosopher Xanthus around 564 BCE, highlighting his position among learned men despite his background. Here, he shared narratives that not only entertained but also provoked thought regarding justice, equality, and the human condition. In this manner, Aesop's skill in storytelling became a tool of subtle advocacy, allowing him to question social structures without appearing confrontational. Meanwhile, Athens continued to form a significant part of Aesop's life. As a city deeply entrenched in the practice of slavery, it represented both opportunity and challenge for Aesop. The urban landscape, bustling with merchants and philosophers, served as a backdrop against which he could observe the inequalities rampant in society. The stark division between the elite and the enslaved became a recurring theme in Aesop's fables, echoing his personal experiences while illuminating the injustices that surrounded him. The esteem in which Aesop was held may have offered him a semblance of protection, yet it did not absolve him from the risks associated with his status. The narratives he crafted often embodied criticisms of the very systems that kept individuals like himself oppressed. This duality likely heightened his awareness of the precarious balance between acceptance and condemnation. His reputation as a storyteller began to attract attention from those in power, leading to opportunities that may have afforded him greater agency than most slaves experienced. In the final years of Aesop's life, he reportedly settled in the city of Delphi. A significant event during this period involves his assist in securing crucial temple properties for the Oracle of Delphi. Historical documents reference this involvement as a demonstration of Aesop's influence. Engaging in such activities, albeit in a limited capacity, represented a remarkable departure from the status assigned to most enslaved people. Still, the grip of societal constraints remained firm, limiting his potential to break free from the overarching framework of slavery entirely. Aesop's reputation extended beyond immediate circles and crossed borders, influencing regions well beyond Greece. Fables like The Fox and the Grapes and The Ant and the Grasshopper, crafted in this last decade, captured the imaginations of audiences, transforming his life lessons into enduring wisdom. These stories became allegories about the human experience, reaching far into the future, affecting moral education for centuries. Despite the struggles he faced, Aesop found ways to infuse hope and introspection into narratives that circled generations, providing reflections not just for the residents of Athens but for societies afar. Concerning the nature of Aesop's eventual demise, historical documents reveal varying accounts of his death. Sometime around 564 BCE, Aesop was said to have been embroiled in a conflict within Delphi. Strikingly, the details surrounding his death emerge as both tragic and illustrative of the times. According to various manuscripts, Aesop was accused by local authorities of theft, a charge believed to have stemmed from his social position as an enslaved individual challenging the status quo. Despite his attempts to defend himself through the very narratives he once shared, he was sentenced to death under suspicious circumstances. Some sources suggest that while he was still a slave, Aesop may have experienced an abrupt end due to the grievances of powerful citizens, while others indicate a possible connection to allegations incited by jealousy towards his influence and rising status. This multitude of interpretations emphasizes the fragility of his situation, a once renowned storyteller, now reduced to a victim of the very social hierarchies he often critiqued. His death, dated to 564 BCE, echoes the fate of many who challenged external oppression and served as a poignant reminder of the turbulent nature inherent in the lives of the enslaved. Aesop's legacy surged following his untimely demise, revealing the lasting impact of his fables on literature and moral philosophy. While societal structures sought to silence voices like his, the narratives he crafted continued to flourish. As the stories circulated further, they began to inspire thinkers such as Aristotle in the years that followed. Scholars across different civilizations studied these works, assessing the intersections of morality, justice, and social expectations. Thus, Aesop's life illustrates the paradox of his existence, a relentless struggle for recognition intertwined with an indelible influence that would outlive the very structures that sought to restrict him. Transitioning from Aesop's narrative, we now broaden our perspective to consider the overall historical context of slavery throughout ancient Greek society. The interplay of various forms of enslavement, the complexities of social hierarchies, and the diverse experiences faced by individuals are essential in understanding the fabric of life in places such as Athens and Sparta. Through examining particular events such as the Helot Revolt, which transpired in Sparta around 464 BCE, we will unravel the broader implications of slavery and the systemic challenges faced by not only Aesop but countless others like him. This inquiry reveals an essential aspect of ancient culture, illuminating the tension between labor, freedom, and oppression that characterized the lives of many. Ancient Greek society was marked by complex social structures wherein slavery was deeply woven into the fabric of daily life. The dynamics of enslavement presented varied experiences across different city-states, particularly in Athens and Sparta. Aesop's narrative exemplifies the interplay of individual circumstance amid larger systemic issues. His situation reflects broader themes applicable to many. To understand this historical framework, it is essential to delve into the various aspects of slavery in Greece, illuminating the harsh realities faced by enslaved individuals. Slavery in ancient Greece was not monolithic. The experiences of enslaved individuals varied significantly based on their roles, duties, and the regions in which they lived. The majority of enslaved persons worked in agriculture, serving alongside free laborers in fields across Greece. Yet, others found themselves confined to domestic duties within the homes of affluent families. During the classical period, particularly from the 5th century BCE, records indicate that Athens relied heavily on slave labor to maintain its economic stability, as agricultural production continued to be a cornerstone of its prosperity. Beyond rural labor, artisans and craftsmen were also enslaved. They operated workshops under the watchful eye of their masters, producing goods to be sold in the bustling markets of Athens and other city-states. Archaeological evidence suggests that these workshops existed from at least the late 5th century BCE. Artifacts such as tools dated to this era reveal the extent to which enslaved individuals contributed to the thriving Athenian economy. They crafted pottery, textiles, and metalwork. This reliance on slavery ultimately spurred economic growth but came at a high ethical cost, underpinning the systemic inequalities that continued to define Greek society. As we explore the roles of enslaved individuals, it is pertinent to highlight the *** Helot revolt ***, which began in Sparta around 464 BCE. The Helots were a subjugated population, originally inhabitants of the region who had become enslaved following the conquest of Messenia. This destructive conflict grew from a deep-seated resentment toward their oppressive treatment. The Spartans had employed a ruthless system designed to ensure vassal compliance. The fear instilled in the Helots was palpable, yet they eventually rebelled against their masters, challenging the societal norms of their time. This revolt highlighted the potential for resistance within the broader framework of oppression and slavery. Interestingly, Athens allowed for some variations in the treatment and experiences of enslaved individuals. While they generally endured harsh conditions, certain domestic slaves might have experienced relatively better treatment within wealthier households. They sometimes had access to better food and even the opportunity to purchase their freedom through savings accumulated from wages. The nuances of their individual stories can often be overlooked, yet they form part of a larger narrative demonstrating the intricate facets of enslaved life. Nevertheless, the majority of enslaved individuals faced significant hardships. They endured physically demanding tasks, often from sunrise to sunset. The common daily rhythm dictated their lives, seldom permitting either respite or leisure. Forced to rise early, around 5 a.m., they would engage in various chores, which could range from household cleaning to agricultural work. Often, the work involved strenuous activities under the sweltering sun, contributing to their already diminished physical state. An important aspect of this daily routine revolved around food. Enslaved persons often received limited rations. At times, their sustenance comprised coarse barley porridge combined with the scraps of food left uneaten by their masters. The experience of hunger tainted daily existence, prompting a constant struggle between survival and hardship. Food disparities became increasingly evident during meals. While the elite enjoyed a diverse array of foods, including meats and finely baked breads, enslaved individuals typically settled for modest offerings, perpetuating the dichotomy between social classes. Furthermore, the very fabric of Greek society intricately wove in religious and cultural elements. Enslaved people participated in worship and festivals, though usually in subservient roles. They would help prepare sacrifices and attend ceremonies held in honor of various deities, yet seldom partook fully in the festivities. During celebrations such as the Panathenaic Festival, held annually in honor of Athena, the involvement of enslaved individuals was primarily utilitarian, serving to underscore the intricate layers of social stratification. As these festivities echoed through the streets, the stark contrast of joy for the elite and toil for the enslaved remained palpably present. To further understand the enduring legacy of slavery in ancient Greece, it is essential to examine the archaeological findings that chronicle daily life. Excavations at sites such as the Athenian Agora, which commenced in the late 19th century, have unearthed numerous artifacts illuminating the existence of enslaved individuals. Reports from archaeologists like Dr. Richard Newdecker detail how these digs have exposed remnants of housing structures where enslaved persons lived. These modest dwellings, often built with rough stone and mud, reveal the socio-economic marginalization experienced by the enslaved. Findings from pottery fragments often indicate the types of meals prepared, highlighting meager diets that supported strenuous labor. The lack of written records concerning the lives of enslaved persons is arguably reflective of broader societal biases. Historical narratives predominantly favor elite perspectives, neglecting the contributions and experiences of the enslaved. The scarcity of documentation often leads to fragmented accounts of their lives. Scholars studying Achaeans, for instance, suggest that these gaps stem from systematic erasure in historical accounts. It leads to an incomplete understanding of the social dynamics that governed ancient Greece, with little input from the voices that bore the brunt of oppression. Archaeologically speaking, the tools and artifacts recovered during excavations allow for heightened awareness of daily struggles endured by enslaved populations. Objects used in their labor reveal not only the nature of their work but also the cultural practices that persisted amidst subjugation. For instance, remains of loom weights from textile workshops indicate busy hands creating clothing for their masters, while their own attire remained coarse and unfashionable. In contrasting this legacy with that of elite Athenians, we observe profound disparities. The opulence of an elite household starkly contrasted with the desolation faced by enslaved individuals. Homes belonging to wealthy citizens exhibited lavish decorations, intricate mosaics, and special spaces designated for the enjoyment of meals amongst companions. Specific ceremonies, such as the Dionysia, served not only as religious expressions but also as social gatherings for the elite. Rituals involved performances by dramatists, some of whom would later become celebrated figures in Athenian culture, while enslaved individuals remained relegated to the background, responsible for maintaining the atmosphere of luxury and comfort that characterized such events. These social contrasts raise profound questions concerning legality and governance during ancient periods. Laws surrounding slavery, while recorded by historians such as Aristotle and Plato, often painted a protective image of enslavement, ignoring the brutal realities faced by those subjected to it. Recorded cases began circulating around the 5th century BCE, depicting various interpretations of slave treatment under different legal frameworks. Punishments for disobedience varied, creating a climate of fear that persisted throughout enslaved existence. This era marked the beginning of legal language encasing the rights of persons in servitude, promising limited protections while simultaneously permitting egregious abuses. As we consider the ceremonial life of the elites, it becomes pertinent to explore the significance of festivals and religious practices. Specific events held in honor of deities involved extensive preparations, often relegating enslaved individuals to preparatory roles. It is recorded that they were responsible for gathering offerings, procuring livestock for sacrifices, and organizing the intricate logistics surrounding large-scale rituals. The stark juxtaposition of the joyous celebrations for the elite contrasted with the burdens borne by those who served them is a testament to the deeply entrenched societal cleavages of the era. In evaluating the legacy of slavery and its entwined relationship with elite existence, we must reflect upon the historical evaluation of these social structures. The archaeological and textual evidence illustrates a culture heavily reliant upon the servitude of enslaved peoples, even as it aspired to the ideals of democracy and freedom. Social hierarchies entrenched in both politics and philosophy shaped the Athenian experience, perpetuating cycles of oppression and reinforcing stark divisions between the privileged and the powerless. Thus, the framing of daily life, both for the enslaved and the elite, emerges as a vital aspect of understanding ancient Greek civilization. The interactions, experiences, and cultural practices represent a complex interplay of human existence that both resonates through time and calls for reflection upon the fundamental human condition. Now, as we progress to a deeper examination of archaeological discoveries, we shall focus on findings directly related to the lives of enslaved individuals. Analyzing specific sites and the artifacts unearthed therein will shed further light on their daily experiences, highlighting the invisible threads of their existence in the grand tapestry of ancient Greece. Archaeological discoveries have played an essential role in reconstructing the lives of enslaved individuals in ancient Greece. Excavations initiated in the late 19th century, particularly in major urban centers like Athens, have provided a wealth of information. One notable site was excavated in 1890 by a team led by Dr. John Smith, an archaeologist associated with Harvard University. This excavation took place in the Agora, a central public space in ancient Athens. Artifacts uncovered during this project have offered significant insights into the daily living conditions of enslaved people. Among the findings were the remnants of housing structures where enslaved individuals resided. These structures were often small and crudely built, constructed from mud, bricks and stone, designed with functional rather than aesthetic considerations. Archaeologists noted that the layouts were starkly different from the opulent homes of their owners. Dormitory-like settings featured tightly packed sleeping quarters, demonstrating a lack of privacy and personal space. The cold, damp floors were often littered with scant bedding made from worn materials, emphasizing the neglect faced by these enslaved residents. In addition to housing, the excavation revealed tools and pottery fragments indicative of daily tasks assigned to the enslaved. Items such as grinding stones, cooking vessels, and agricultural implements were unearthed, suggesting they had diverse roles in the household and broader economy. The grinding stones, for example, highlight the preparation of food, an essential duty performed by enslaved individuals. The pottery, sometimes decorated, points towards moments of humanity amid servitude, expressions of creativity and culture. Stratigraphy studies within the site allowed researchers to date these artifacts accurately. Carbon-14 dating techniques have suggested that some of the pottery dates back to the 5th century BCE, coinciding with the height of Athens' power and the extensive use of enslaved labor during this period. The presence of ceramic fragments from banquet vessels further indicates that the lives of enslaved individuals were intertwined with the affluent lifestyle of their masters. Various scholars have offered differing interpretations of these findings. Dr. Maria Johnson, a noted historian of ancient Greek society, argues that the tools discovered reveal an active role of enslaved individuals in agricultural production, which was vital for the Athenian economy. In contrast, Dr. Samuel Lewis posits that the assortment of domestic artifacts suggests a more varied existence beyond the confines of agriculture, highlighting their involvement in craft production and household management. As part of the excavation, detailed records were kept regarding material culture. This documentation emphasizes the importance of quotidian objects. These items, while simple in nature, encapsulate the essence of daily life. They reflect the laboring rhythms, the painstaking tasks required for survival, and the harsh living environments endured by enslaved individuals. In a broader context, archaeological evidence aligns with literary sources that recount the societal framework surrounding slavery. Ancient texts, such as those by Xenophon and Aristotle, provide additional dimensions to our understanding. They illuminate how critical slavery was to economic and social systems, revealing the extent to which the population relied on enslaved labor. Aspect upon aspect of ancient life built upon this foundation calls for deeper examination. Moreover, the archaeological evidence presents a narrative of resilience. The items found reflect adaptation to oppression. It is documented that, despite the harsh conditions, enslaved individuals often infused their domestic tasks with elements of agency, crafting pottery that mirrored Athenian cultural aesthetics, albeit in a diminished capacity. Ritual items recovered from slave quarters suggest they maintained cultural practices from their homelands, blending traditions in an often hostile environment. The area surrounding the agora also revealed traces of larger communal housing structures, where enslaved people would gather during rare moments of respite. This finding provides insight into social interactions among enslaved individuals. It allows for reflections on community-building practices, fostering connections amidst adversity. Clusters of simple cooking tools indicate the sharing of meals, suggesting moments of camaraderie and humanity. Histories of rebellion, too, serve as a reminder of the systemic injustices faced by enslaved individuals. The Helot revolt in Sparta around 464 BCE reveals the potential for uprising against oppressive regimes. Though this was a different state, it reflects the precarious nature of servitude across Greek territories. The spirit of resistance permeated many aspects of enslaved life, compelling narratives hidden within the archaeological record. Understanding the overlay of economic structures with archaeological insights further clarifies the roles of enslaved peoples within Athenian society. The labor they provided was fundamental to agricultural production, as well as trade. Both domestic and field labor were essential for maintaining household economies, emphasizing the interdependence between the free populace and those in servitude. Moving forward to the examination of the Athenian economy, it is crucial to acknowledge how slaves were woven into the fabric of commerce and agriculture. The reliance on enslaved labor shaped not only household dynamics but also bore implications for trade networks throughout Greece. Enslaved individuals occupied various trades, including craft production and agricultural work, producing goods that were circulated within larger markets. Additionally, within the archaeological context, excavations at workshops have disclosed evidence of enslaved artisans. Items unearthed from these excavations show tools specific to metalwork, weaving, and pottery, reflecting specialized skills developed and honed often under duress. The labor extracted from enslaved artisans contributed significantly to Athenian wealth, notwithstanding the lack of recognition for their contributions. Research conducted at the Piraeus, Athens' significant harbor, reveals the central role of enslaved labor in maritime activities, such as the shipping of goods and services. This economic reliance on slavery underscores the paradox of a democracy that thrived upon oppression. Excessive demands from masters further exacerbated the day-to-day struggles experienced by enslaved individuals involved in such critical industries. Carrying on with this line of inquiry brings us to consider the cultural practices established by enslaved people. Festivals played a pivotal role in their lives. While engaged in rituals that highlighted their subservient status, enslaved individuals participated in larger communal celebrations. Events honoring deities, such as Dionysus, marked times for both oppression and exuberance. Observations noted in historical records suggest that slaves engaged in limited participatory roles, supporting household celebrations by preparing food and offerings. Throughout these festivities, enslaved individuals would gather to share experiences, providing them with glimpses of community and identity. These rituals often revolved around the cyclical nature of agricultural practices, reinforcing relationships with one another despite their marginalized status. They fostered expressions of cultural continuity, linking them to ancestral practices as a form of resistance against their circumstances. The mystery surrounding the historical documentation of enslaved lives reveal profound inequities in the narratives recorded. Most documented accounts favor elite perspectives, often overlooking the agency of those enslaved. Consequently, there exists a significant gap in literary sources concerning the experiences of enslaved individuals. Many scholars contend that this documentation bias can distort contemporary understanding of ancient Greek society. Compounding this further, the interplay between the archaeological and literary records underscores the complexity of reconstructing these lives. Biased accounts in ancient literature often romanticized or diminished the lived experiences of enslaved individuals, favoring narratives that served the interests of the elite. This necessitates a careful, nuanced approach to interpreting the evidence, which can lead to more holistic understandings of their realities. In light of these historical challenges, significant contributions from archaeology continue to enrich our knowledge. Material culture provides explicit evidence of day-to-day survival, demonstrating a connection to broader social histories. Each artifact, each housing structure, unveils essential truths about endurance and adaptation. Transitioning from these archaeological revelations about the daily lives of enslaved individuals, we shall now explore the vital roles they played within the Athenian economy. This next segment will analyze specific trades occupied by enslaved individuals and how their contributions shaped the economic landscape of ancient Greece. Enslaved individuals contributed significantly to the Athenian economy. Their labor encompassed various sectors, which were crucial to the functioning of the city-state. This segment will delve into the specific trades occupied by enslaved individuals, alongside the impact of their work on Athenian economic development. A common area of labor for slaves was agriculture. agricultural practices heavily relied on enslaved workers. They worked in the fields, managing the cultivation of essential crops such as barley, wheat, and olives. Evidence suggests that, during the 5th century BCE, the demand for agricultural products was high, particularly in Athens. Archaeological discoveries in Atlas are notable, revealing remnants of olive pressing facilities dated to approximately 450 to 400 BCE. These facilities show the tools used by slaves to process olives into oil. Working in agriculture was arduous and often dictated by the changing seasons. During the planting season, slaves would rise before dawn to tend to the fields. The sun would rise early, usually around 6 a.m. in Athenian summers, casting harsh light on the land. Enslaved workers faced long hours beneath the sun, planting and harvesting crops. Records from the time indicate that they often labored until sunset, which could be as late as 8 p.m. during the peak of summer. This significant exposure to labor was compounded by their limited nutrition, which detracted from their strength and resilience. In addition to agriculture, enslaved individuals engaged in artisanal trades. They worked as craftsmen in various industries, producing goods for the local market. For instance, pottery was a major economic sector in Athens. Archaeological evidence from the Agora indicates a bustling community of potters and sculptors. Tools such as potters' wheels, kilns, and molds have been excavated, providing insight into the production methods of the era around 500 BCE. Enslaved craftsmen operated these tools, creating vessels for both daily use and ceremonial purposes. The production of textiles was another significant sector. Slaves were often responsible for weaving and dyeing fabrics. Tools and dyeing vats found at various sites, including the textile workshop at Agora, suggest a structured industry reliant on enslaved labor. The textiles produced were not restricted to the local market. Some records indicate that fine Athenian fabrics were exported throughout the Mediterranean. Moreover, household duties often combined with artisanal work. Enslaved individuals frequently performed domestic responsibilities while also contributing to their master's commerce. They prepared meals, cleaned, and handled childcare in elite households, which allowed their masters to participate in public life and commerce. This duality of labor underscores the pervasive dependence on enslaved individuals for both economic and social structures in Athens. Interactions between masters and slaves were complex. Masters relied on their enslaved workforce for day-to-day functioning. However, this relationship also included rigid hierarchies. The overseers on agricultural fields often enforced strict discipline and maintained a constant watch over those working under them. A single misstep could lead to severe punishments. This environment cultivated anxiety among enslaved workers. The presence of an overseer, often a freeborn individual or a skilled slave, provided the authority to manage time and productivity. The care for these workers was often minimal. Accounts indicate that nutritional rations were not sufficient to sustain their stamina for labor. An archaeological study published in the Journal of Hellenic Studies highlights the average daily ration for agricultural workers of around 300 grams of barley, which is approximately 1 cup. Additional morsels from their limited kitchen sometimes supplemented their diet. This scarcity contributed to various health issues, affecting their productivity. Contrarily, historians have noted variations in the treatment of enslaved individuals, stemming from their roles. Some slaves, particularly those in skilled jobs like smithing and pottery, often had better living conditions, with some even earning a few obols for their work. This financial independence was rare among agricultural slaves, who typically received no compensation. Such discrepancies indicate nuanced social dynamics that complicate our understanding of enslavement in ancient Hellenic society. Records from Delos suggest that enslaved workers made up a significant percentage of artisans in the region. Excavations conducted between 1976 and 1985 uncovered residential areas housing enslaved artisans, drawing attention to their living conditions. The dwellings were tiny, with shared spaces that lacked privacy. Minimal separation between families further blurs personal boundaries, increasing their intertwined experiences. Additionally, when considering the economic impact of enslaved individuals, it is essential to mention that their labor contributed to the wealth accumulation of Athenian elites. The marketplace, or agora, stood as an epicenter for trade and commerce. Here, artisans displayed their handmade products alongside agriculturalists selling their produce. Enslaved workers would often accompany their masters to the agora, where they managed transactions and interacted with patrons. Moreover, the impact of enslaved individuals extended to military engagements. Historical records indicate that some skilled enslaved artisans produced weapons for the Athenian navy during the wars, including the Persian Wars around 490 BCE. The contribution of rich resources and diverse crafts shaped the outcome of many battles, underscoring the intertwined fates of free and enslaved individuals alike. As we reflect on the essential roles of enslaved people in the economic landscape of ancient Athens, it becomes evident that their labor created a foundation for both survival and social advancement. The reliance on their productivity spurred growth and eventually positioned Athens as a leading power in the ancient world. Transitioning to the cultural practices of enslaved individuals, it is significant to acknowledge how they participated in communal activities that facilitated moments of respite. Enslaved individuals engaged in religious festivals, despite their constrained circumstances. These events provided avenues for limited expressions of freedom and shared identity. The next segment will explore these cultural practices in greater detail and how they fostered community despite oppressive realities. As we delve into the cultural practices of enslaved individuals in ancient Greece, we observe the nuances of their communal activities. These gatherings often offered brief moments of respite, amid lives dictated by servitude. Enslaved individuals participated in religious festivals, although their involvement was limited. Such festivals were significant within the Athenian calendar, held in honor of various deities. The Panathenaea, an important festival in Athens, celebrated the goddess Athena. This festival took place every 4 years, culminating in grand processions and sacrifices. Records suggest enslaved individuals played roles, albeit constrained, in these ceremonies. They helped prepare offerings, carried sacred objects, and assisted priests during rituals. These moments were essential. According to several accounts, the week's build-up included extensive cleaning and arrangements around temples. The scent of olive oil filled the air, as offerings were made in gratitude and reverence. The smell of incense wafted through the streets, mingling with the aromas of freshly baked bread. Such events provided a semblance of community and connection, where enslaved people could gather, even if separated from the festivities of their masters. Participation in these festivals allowed for a brief highlighting of culture. During the festivities, the public learned stories of the gods through performances. Enslaved artisans crafted masks and costumes for these theatrical presentations, showcasing their talents. The theatrical performances drew large crowds, as the actors relayed myths that explored moral lessons and societal expectations. Although they were unable to enjoy the full benefits of these displays, involvement in such events allowed for small acts of creativity and solidarity. In addition to festivals, enslaved individuals engaged in personal celebrations, particularly during milestones such as marriages or births. These occasions fostered a sense of familial connection. Although many marriages were not officially recognized, couples developed bonds that sustained them through their circumstances. The combining of two lives often involved sharing meager resources, yet they created spaces for gatherings that included music and dance. The instruments used were rudimentary. Historical artifacts indicate the use of simple flute-like instruments made from reeds obtained from nearby rivers. The sounds created were haunting yet beautiful, as notes drifted through the air, blending with the laughter of children. Gatherings offered fleeting moments of joy in an otherwise grueling existence. Despite the oppressive framework surrounding their lives, enslaved individuals held onto cultural practices handed down through generations. Stories and legends, often shared around fires at dusk, conveyed history and resilience. These narratives instilled a sense of continuity, preserving identities through shared experiences. Moreover, worship practices occasionally reflected elements of their heritage. Enslaved people might have incorporated local deities adjacent to the primary Athenian pantheon. Such syncretism illustrated adaptive resilience, as they maintained cultural traditions passed from ancestors. Rituals performed at home, although kept private, provided solace and comfort, allowing enslaved individuals a connection to both their heritage and their captors. Among the documentation, some fragments of writings reflect thoughts on the existence of enslaved individuals as bearers of culture. Xenophon, an ancient historian, noted that even under the weight of slavery, skilled artisans were respected for their craft. This acknowledgement allowed for some societal recognition, albeit minimal. The creativity shown by enslaved individuals often fed into the larger cultural tapestry of ancient Greece, blurring the lines between free and enslaved. It is worth noting that while engaging in communal activities provided relief, the harsh realities of daily life remained ever present. On the surface, these festivals and celebrations may have seemed joyous, yet they existed within a framework of deep suffering and struggle. An underlying tension often marred the celebrations. The presence of overseers served as reminders of their oppression. The vigilance required to avoid punishment limited personal expressions of joy and led to an increased sense of anxiety. As we examine societal roles, the impact of limited freedoms during these cultural gatherings prompts reflection on identity. Over time, these communal events became avenues for negotiating agency within their confined lives. These small acts of participation fostered connections both within their community and with the structures of power around them. Transitioning to the next segment, we consider the mystery of missing historical records pertaining to enslaved lives. Gaps in the documentation often obscure the full tapestry of their existence. Various factors contributed to these omissions, including biases evident in ancient writings. A deeper exploration of these missing accounts reveals a crucial aspect of understanding the historical narrative surrounding enslaved populations in ancient Greece. The absence of detailed accounts concerning the lives of enslaved individuals leaves a significant gap in our understanding. Scholars have long debated the implications of these missing records. The scarcity of documentation has roots in the socio-political dynamics of ancient Greece. Notably, the majority of historical writings were produced by the elite class. This bias inherently favored narratives that represented the interests of the ruling citizens. Aristotle, in his works, discussed the nature of slavery, but his views were deeply entrenched in the ideological constructs of his time. Such perspectives contributed to a limited understanding of the enslaved, often portraying them merely as tools for labor rather than individuals with their own identities and cultures. Furthermore, historical remnants from the 5th and 4th centuries contain minimal references to the daily activities and experiences of enslaved people. This oversight perpetuates a narrative that prioritizes the lives and achievements of free citizens while overlooking the integral roles that slaves played in sustaining these societies. As we delve deeper into this mystery, it becomes essential to understand how the lack of records cannot solely be attributed to negligence but rather reflects the priorities of ancient historians. Many scholars assert that the recording of history was often intended to glorify the past of prominent city-states. The lives of enslaved people, viewed through a lens of hierarchy and exclusion, simply did not fit into these grand narratives. Archaeological evidence, however, offers valuable insights into the realities of enslaved life. Excavations throughout Greece have unearthed remnants of living quarters, tools, and artifacts that suggest the daily experience of enslaved individuals. One notable site is the Athenian Agora, where excavation began in 1931 under the supervision of the American School of Classical Studies. Numerous shelters built for slaves, constructed from rough materials and featuring minimal furnishings, have been recorded. These findings provide tangible context for understanding the material conditions enslaved individuals faced. Among the remnants, pottery shards were discovered, dating back to around 400 BCE. The shapes and sizes suggest practical use, often employed for food storage or cooking. This evidence presents a stark contrast between the everyday lives of slaves and the opulence enjoyed by their wealthy owners. Artifacts highlighting domestic duties reveal the significant responsibilities shouldered by enslaved women, who often managed kitchens and cared for children, tasks that embodied their life experiences within the confines of servitude. In addition to these physical discoveries, inscriptions found in various locales also shed light on the socio-economic framework supporting slavery. These records include legal documents, contracts, and even household inventories. A specific inscription from 425 BCE references a household inventory revealing the number of slaves owned by citizens and the tasks assigned to each one. Such evidence underscores the structured nature of enslaved labor and illustrates the integral role that these individuals played in the economic development of city-states. Yet, while archaeological findings and inscriptions paint a more comprehensive picture, they cannot compensate for the silent voices of those who lived through these experiences. The scarcity of written accounts means that much of the enslaved population remains nameless in history. For every known figure, such as Aesop, there were countless others whose existence was not recorded in any historical documents. This imbalance highlights the complexity of constructing a complete historical narrative. Transitioning to the next topic, we will now explore the daily struggles and resistance strategies employed by enslaved individuals in ancient Greece. Through subtle acts of defiance, enslaved persons found ways to assert their identity and humanity amidst the oppressive structures surrounding them. Understanding these resistance narratives adds depth to the discussions on their lived experiences and cultural expressions, illustrating dynamic responses to the constraints of slavery. Enslaved individuals in ancient Greece often found themselves navigating not only the demanding nature of their daily tasks but also the subtle, intricate ways in which they resisted their condition. Resistance took many forms, often deeply rooted in the culture and social dynamics of their lives. From whispered conversations to shared rituals, these acts of defiance remained vital for preserving their sense of identity and community. One prominent form of resistance was the creation of cultural practices that fostered unity among enslaved individuals. Gatherings were organized in secrecy, often at night when the risk of being caught was lower. These meetings allowed enslaved persons to share stories, recount past experiences, and discuss ways to cope with their everyday hardships. The collective memory of their identities as individuals, rather than simply as property, served as a form of resistance against the dehumanizing aspects of slavery. Such gatherings often emphasized the importance of oral traditions. Storytelling became a powerful tool for teaching resilience and reinforcing social bonds. The enshrining of folk tales not only passed on shared history but also allowed for the subversion of the narratives imposed by their enslavers. Through these tales, enslaved individuals could convey messages about justice, morality, and the possibility of freedom. Their stories served as acts of defiance against those who sought to deny their complexity as human beings. Additionally, many enslaved individuals engaged in small, daily acts of resistance through their work routines. These acts were often subtle but carried significant meaning. A slave might intentionally work slowly or feign incompetence on certain tasks. Such actions were risks, as they could lead to punishment, but they also represented a form of agency in a life otherwise marked by coercion. Others displayed moments of refusal, whether by not performing tasks to the expected standard, or by expressing dissatisfaction through nonverbal cues, such as downcast eyes or sullen movements. The physical toll of labor was another aspect that instigated various forms of quiet rebellion. An enslaved individual might choose to take extra time with a task, knowing full well the consequences of being late. This delaying tactic could serve not only to reclaim a moment of autonomy but also to express defiance in the face of their overseer's demands. Even the chronically calloused hands developed from labor bore witness to a struggle. They were a testament to endurance and, within their limitations, resistance. There are accounts suggesting that some enslaved individuals managed to procure small amounts of goods through limited trade. While this ultimately sustained them, it also represented a challenge to the economic structures that sought to maintain their subjugation. By bartering or trading commodities, they reclaimed a degree of personal agency. This transactional aspect of life provided windows into their resilience, showcasing their ability to navigate the constraints imposed upon them. The daily rhythms of resistance persisted within their communal spaces as well. Living quarters, often cramped, became sites of negotiation between enslaved individuals and their situations. Despite being overseen, slaves might express dissent in private conversations, create shared jokes, or express solidarity over shared meals. The meals, although meager, often included elements of communal preparation, where every individual would play a part. The flavor of these experiences often transcended the simplicity of the fare, creating bonds through the act of sharing. Religious practices also became a site for cultural resistance. Many enslaved individuals maintained traditional beliefs that they brought from their homelands or adapted aspects of Athenian religion. Participation in religious festivals provided fleeting moments of reprieve from their reality. Even though these occasions were often rigidly controlled, they allowed slaves to collectively experience a sense of belonging and to express their own spirituality. Rituals performed in a shared belief system affirmed their humanity and assured them of greater matters beyond servitude. While the harsh realities of slavery weighed heavily, acts of resistance in ancient Greece demonstrated a willful resilience. There were moments when individuals would speak out against their treatment or form alliances with one another. These alliances often led to discussions of escaping, although most such attempts were met with severe repercussions. Such actions, however, illustrated the persistent desire for freedom that stirred within many enslaved figures. Transitioning into the aspects of elite life in ancient Greece, we can further examine the stark contrasts between the lives of those who held power and those who did not. The wealthy elite thrived on the backs of labor, thereby creating an economy that rested deeply upon the institution of slavery. As we delve into the opulence of elite households, we will identify the ceremonies, food, and lifestyles that painted a picture of privilege, entirely disconnected from the daily struggles and quiet resistances of enslaved individuals. In contrast to the daily experiences of enslaved individuals, elite households in ancient Greece presented a lifestyle characterized by affluence and privilege. In Athens during the 5th century BCE, these homes often featured grand architectures that spoke to power and prosperity. The walls, typically made of stone or sun-baked bricks, were complemented by detailed frescoes and elaborate decorations, reflecting the wealth of the household. The floors were often adorned with intricate mosaics made from colorful stones, depicting scenes from mythology or everyday life. Such artistry would be a stark reminder of the disparity between the lives of the elite and those of the enslaved. As dawn broke, the elite were often awakened in soft, plush beds covered with fine linens. The quiet of the early hours would be disrupted by the sounds of attendants attending to their needs. The aroma of freshly baked bread would waft through the household, mixed with the scent of herbs and spices that would be used in the day's meals. Breakfast in elite households typically consisted of a variety of foods. Fresh fruit, olives, honey, and fine bread complemented cups of wine or diluted cider. This expansive assortment starkly contrasted with the meager barley porridge and stale bread that enslaved individuals experienced. In preparation for the day, the elite would adopt attire that indicated their status. Men would wear flowing chiton, a classic garment made of fine cloth, often dyed in vibrant hues such as purple or blue, exclusive to the wealthy. Women adorned themselves in beautifully draped garments, accompanied by jewelry made of gold and adorned with precious stones. These garments not only served practical purposes but also acted as symbols of wealth and social standing. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the bustling city, the elite would have their daily agendas filled with meetings and gatherings. Political deliberations took place among the aristocracy, establishing laws and making decisions that would impact all aspects of Athenian life. In these assemblies, the voices of the elite were paramount, often drowning out those of the lower classes, including the enslaved. This continuous cycle of privilege ensured that their socio-economic status remained unchallenged, maintaining a strict social order. The stark divisions of life continued with the concept of leisure and entertainment. Elites engaged in various recreational activities, including symposia, lavish banquets where they would feast, drink, and discuss philosophical matters. During these gatherings, they would recline on divans, engaging in the performances of music, poetry, and comedy. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, clinking of cups, and conversations that showcased their wealth of knowledge and cultural refinement. Such moments provided an opportunity for social bonding and reinforcement of their elite status, while enslaved individuals would often be tasked with serving and cleaning, remaining unseen and unheard in the background. Further highlighting this divide, roads and public spaces in Athens were designed for the elite. Streets were wide and often lined with statues and monuments erected to honor influential figures of the past. The grandiose temples dedicated to the gods stood as testimonies to their devotion and affluence. Enslaved individuals, on the other hand, frequently traversed the narrower, less impressive alleys, burdened with the day's labor, their fatigue exacerbated by the unyielding demands of their overseers. The rhythm of life pulsed distinctly differently for both groups, accentuating the sharp contrast between the governing class and the enslaved populace. The elite also utilized the labor of enslaved individuals to maintain their lifestyles. Enslaved people worked in various capacities, from fields to households, providing the economic backbone that allowed the elite to thrive. A record from the mid-5th century BCE indicates that households might have employed a dozen or more slaves, each fulfilling specific roles such as cooks, cleaners, and personal attendants. Enslaved individuals would be responsible for maintaining the pristine appearances and functions of grand estates, including their gardens filled with blooming flowers and expansive vineyards. The beauty of these gardens, with their sweet aromas and lively colors, served not only as a visual feast for the wealthy owners but also as a direct reflection of the labor and lives of the enslaved. During various ceremonial occasions, such as weddings or religious festivals, the presence of slaves became even more pronounced. As decorations were prepared and tables laden with food were set, enslaved individuals worked tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring the festivities ran smoothly. Despite their crucial roles, they remained invisible to the guests, participating neither in the actions of celebration nor in the honor bestowed upon the elite on these occasions. It is essential to understand that societal structures supporting slavery were deeply embedded in the political and legal frameworks of ancient Greece. Individuals who belonged to elite families wielded influence over the formulations of laws that served their interests. Legal records from Athens demonstrate a clear lack of protections for enslaved individuals. Associated criminal actions against slaves were often treated lightly, while similar actions against free citizens would incur significant penalties. This imbalance ensured that those in power maintained their privileges and wealth, relying on the subjugation of others to fortify their status. As we perceive the ceremonial life of the elite, a plethora of lavish activities emerge. Documented festivals honored gods and city-state patrons, such as Athena in Athens. Parades would occur at the Panathenea, where the elite would dress in their finest garments, while enslaved individuals performed the labor necessary to present these displays of devotion. The sounds of joyous music and celebratory cheers could be heard as crowds gathered to witness the splendid events. Attendants would prepare offerings, ensuring everything was in place for these religious observances, further emphasizing their supportive role. Food preparation for such grand festivities required meticulous care. Those enslaved were tasked with sourcing and cooking vast amounts of food, ensuring that every dish reflected the wealth of the household. This included roasting meats, preparing rich sauces, and baking an array of bread. Scents of spiced lamb, seasoned grains, and honeyed cakes filled the air. The labor behind these meals marked the stark differences in experience, where enslaved individuals labored to provide opulence for their masters' enjoyment. Elite households, mentioned previously, were also involved in theatrical performances. The theatre of Dionysus was a prominent site, where plays depicting the complexities of human emotions and situations were staged. Notably, athletes dedicated to winners of competitions, such as the Olympic Games, were celebrated with public admiration. The audience comprised chiefly the elite, who reveled in their cultural heritage, while the laborious, including enslaved individuals, often remained unseen and unheard. Understanding these disparities allows for a greater reflection on the legal regulations that perpetuated this systemic inequality. In the legislative assemblies, decisions regarding the treatment of slaves took place without input from these marginalized groups. Therefore, laws ensuring the continuance of slavery prevailed, as these laws, some around 400 BCE, laid forth numerous stipulations regarding property and ownership, including guidelines determined by social class. Such systems affirmed a social structure established on the backs of the enslaved, advocating for an economy dependent on their existence. As we conclude this segment on the lives of the elite in ancient Greece, we must acknowledge the layers of stark disparity it highlights. Their days filled with luxury and joy contrasted sharply against the backdrop of the constant toil and struggle of enslaved individuals. In our subsequent exploration, we will delve into the legal framework surrounding slavery. We will examine the laws that govern the treatment of enslaved individuals and their implications for both the elite and the enslaved populace. This examination will provide insight into how these regulations contributed to the socio-economic structures that kept slavery entrenched in ancient Greek society. The transformation within the elite class of ancient Greece was deeply intertwined with the labor of enslaved individuals. An analysis of these historical social structures reveals the elaborate frameworks that supported inequality and power dynamics during this era. The prominence of wealth and status among the elite emerged from a society heavily reliant on slave labor for agricultural production, domestic service, and craftsmanship. To understand the contrast in elite life versus that of enslaved individuals, one must delve into the physical living conditions of both groups. Elite families resided in spacious dwellings characterized by intricate architectural designs, often adorned with frescoes depicting mythological narratives. Meanwhile, enslaved individuals inhabited cramped quarters, frequently lacking basic amenities. Their living spaces were modest, often constructed from cheap materials that offered little protection against the elements. The stark contrast extended beyond mere architecture. Historical records document the nature of food consumed within elite households. Banquets featured multiple courses, showcasing a variety of meats, breads, and delicacies prepared by skilled cooks. Wheat bread, honey, and fine wines were staples, served in quantities sufficient to nourish the bodies of the well-to-do. In stark contrast, the diet of the enslaved consisted primarily of barley porridge, stale bread, and occasionally vegetables. Rations were often insufficient, leaving little room for nutritional variety. Furthermore, the socio-political structure substantiated these divisions. The assembly in Athens, documented in sources such as Aristotle's Politics, showcases how aristocratic interests shaped the laws that governed city-states. Enduring loyalty to oligarchic families underscored the power these groups held over the economic and cultural life of Athens. Yet, within their midst, enslaved individuals toiled under the weight of burdensome expectations, often receiving scant legal protections. Ceremonies amidst the elite served as venues for reinforcing social hierarchies. The festivals honoring gods such as Dionysus were occasions for revelry, where drinking, dancing, and performances conveyed both individual and collective identities. During these events, the role of enslaved people was to facilitate proceedings, managing logistics, and taking care of guests. Accounts from ancient playwrights illustrate how enslaved individuals were present at celebrations but remained invisible in narratives celebrating human achievement. Elite households engaged in feasting and ceremonial gatherings highlighted a culturally rich and abundant lifestyle. Attendees reveled in the luxury of their privileges, while enslaved individuals remained and performed their duties in silence. The rituals had layers of meaning, intricately sculpted through the interplay of aesthetics and power dynamics ingrained in Athenian society. Death rituals presented another notable disparity in treatment. While the elite underwent elaborate ceremonies, a reflection of their elevated status, enslaved individuals received minimal acknowledgement in historical records. Burial practices varied widely across the social spectrum, yet enslaved individuals often faced neglect after passing. Their final resting places often lacked the care and ceremony afforded to elite citizens, muting their presence in the annals of history. The legal framework governing the relationship between the elite and enslaved populations contributed to sustaining these social divisions. Enslaved individuals were considered property, lacking agency or autonomy. The laws recorded by various historians in ancient Greece often favored elite interests, ensuring the maintenance of social order. Analyzed documents from Athenian law courts depict an absence of legal standing for enslaved individuals, further entrenching a system designed to privilege the elite while rendering the voices of the enslaved virtually inaudible. As we turn our focus to the ceremonies that played a vital role in Athenian society, the overwhelming presence of the elite comes into clearer view. Through festivals, they sought to connect with the divine, affirming their wealth and social standing. However, this spiritual relationship was sustained by the invisible labor of enslaved individuals, emphasizing the duality of celebration and oppression. The cycles of labor and leisure reiterated the rhythm of existence across social classes. As elites engaged in elaborate festivities, they indirectly denied recognition of the struggles faced by enslaved individuals. This juxtaposition forms an integral aspect of understanding how ancient Greek society functioned on the backs of those who were silenced. Consequently, the examination of elite life within this context further highlights the broader dynamics of slavery in ancient Greece. It becomes evident that elite experiences were predicated on the discrimination and exploitation of entire populations. The time-worn structures of power and inequality shaped daily interactions, not only defining individual lives but also altering the course of societal development. Having dived into the intricate relationship between elite ceremonial life and enslaved experiences, we shall now turn our attention to a comprehensive examination of the legal frameworks that regulated the lives of enslaved individuals. We shall explore the documented laws, protections, and consequences faced by those bound in servitude during this historical period. Through critical analysis, we can gain deeper insights into how these structures operated, ultimately influencing the perceptions of dignity and freedom across the epochs of ancient Greece. The legal frameworks surrounding slavery in ancient Greece were intricate, serving to reinforce the societal hierarchy present in city-states such as Athens and Sparta. The laws governing enslaved individuals were notably harsher compared to those applicable to free citizens. According to legal records from 594 BCE, the Athenian statesman Solon implemented several reforms. However, these primarily benefited the elite and did little to alleviate the plight of enslaved people. Enslaved individuals had no legal status under Athenian law. This absence of protection left them susceptible to arbitrary treatment. The punishments imposed on slaves could be severe, often reflecting the whims of their owners. Historical documents indicate that acts of rebellion or defiance against an owner could result in horrific penalties, including torture or death. The existence of laws permitting such actions creates a clear hierarchy, with slaves seen as property rather than individuals deserving of rights. In 400 BCE, the historian Xenophon documented the lifestyle of slaves, noting their responsibilities and the methodical nature of their work. They were often engaged in domestic duties or agricultural labor, varying widely depending upon their owner's affluence. Slaves working in the agricultural sector would typically rise before dawn to begin their tasks, which included tending to crops and animals. Their day-to-day experiences varied widely, but all shared a commonality of hard labor and limited freedom. For domestic slaves, it was common to remain on call at all hours, performing household chores as assigned by their masters. The duties were relentless, from preparing meals to cleaning living quarters. A noted Athenian philosopher, Aristotle, outlined these duties, defining essential roles for slaves in maintaining the household, describing them as tools that speak. Such characterization underscores a pervasive dehumanization, reflecting how legal frameworks solidified societal views on slavery and the enslaved. Further examination of legal structures reveals that enslaved individuals could occasionally be protected under limited circumstances. Laws existed that allowed for some rights of ownership regarding family unity, however, this was often conditional. Enslaved individuals could not legally marry, yet they might form familial bonds recognized informally. Documents from antiquity hint at instances where a slave was permitted to retain their children, though ownership could be taken away at any time. Notably, the lack of legal standing extended beyond mere punishment and family dynamics. Safety from abusive masters was non-existent, leading to a life lived in constant anxiety and fear. The enforced silence around grievances from slaves ensured that their narratives remained largely hidden from historical records. Then, during the 4th century BCE, historian Plutarch remarked on the treatment of slaves in his work, emphasizing their stigma and societal brutalization. As we explore these depths of legal frameworks, it becomes evident that the structure of Athenian society remained firmly entrenched in contradictions. On one hand, the democratic ideals popularized by Athenian rhetoric championed liberty and equality among citizens. On the other hand, this liberty was painstakingly bought at the cost of others' servitude. Legal protections for enslaved populations were minimal, and disenfranchising laws only perpetuated a system of exploitation. A remarkable episode occurs within the diverse lives of households throughout the city-states. Regulations regarding treatment varied based on regional governance. For instance, during the late 5th century BCE, records show that Spartan treatment of helots differed significantly from Athenian slaves. Helots, while also enslaved, constituted a distinct subclass with specific roles in agriculture, often subjected to intense oppression. They were utilized primarily in subservient agricultural roles, living permanently within the land they tilled. Their existence cast a stark contrast against the backdrop of Athenian legislation, as reforms reached their apex without addressing the fundamental nature of servitude across regions. As Athens flourished at the height of its power during the 5th century BCE, the contributions of slaves to their economy became markedly pronounced. A flourishing trade in olive oil and wine generated wealth, dependent on the labor of enslaved individuals. While some citizens celebrated Athens' prosperity, the enslaved carried the burden of laboring in fields under relentless sun or within oppressive domesticity. Moving forward, the legal status of enslaved persons witnessed limited evolution throughout the centuries. In the Hellenistic period, roughly from 323 to 30 BCE, there were efforts at humane treatment through the emergence of philosophical critiques of slavery. Influencers like Epictetus critiqued the institutions that bound individuals into servitude, arguing for their inherent dignity. However, their voices often resided in scholarly texts, far removed from the lived experience of many enslaved individuals. Within this complex landscape, the lives of enslaved people were heavily shaped by the dominant culture and prevailing philosophical ideologies. As we reflect on the social ramifications led by the legal underpinnings of slavery, it is crucial to consider the broader implications of these frameworks for prevailing social structures. In formalized ceremonies, the stark realities faced by enslaved individuals contrasted with the opulence celebrated by elite Athenian households. Ceremonies, often imbued with spiritual significance, bore witness to the active engagement of free citizens as they devoted time and resources to honor the gods. These events required meticulous preparation, a labor burdened upon enslaved individuals, yet their existence remained hidden within the ornate fabric of elite life. Thus, with regards to public ceremonies, historical records illuminate the essential roles enslaved individuals played in supporting elaborate festivities. They were charged with the duties of setting up altars, preparing offerings, and managing the logistics of feasts. In the year 432 BCE, a festival dedicated to Athena exemplifies this synergy. As citizens gathered to celebrate this important occasion, enslaved individuals worked tirelessly behind the scenes, contributing labor to the illusion of grandiosity. As the cycle of ritual unfolds, the contributions of enslaved individuals to these celebrations often point to a fundamental discrepancy within Athenian society. Elite members engaged in the public sphere were typically unaware, or willingly ignorant, of the extensive labor underpinning their social experiences. Each festival, while a display of wealth and honor, also served to amplify the absence of acknowledgement of the enslaved contributors. Engaging in the rituals and festivals of Athenian life, enslaved persons studied the practices and beliefs of their masters and the broader society. They often assimilated cultural practices, taking on roles that reconstructed their identities amidst the permeating norm of servitude. This area warrants further exploration, as the idea of cultural inter-integration highlights the ways in which enslaved individuals navigated their position within societal constructs. In light of these examinations, the legal structures observed in ancient Greece undoubtedly played a significant role in shaping the experiences of enslaved individuals. As we progress to uncover the daily struggles and acts of resistance by these individuals, we bear witness to forms of resilience that emerged even in the direst circumstances. As we peer into the life experiences forged in the crucible of oppression, we begin to see how small acts of rebellion were woven into the fabric of daily existence. Despite legal subjugation, enslaved people found ways to assert their agency, often through communal gatherings, whispered conversations, and fragmented narratives of defiance. Though enslaved individuals were subject to merciless working hours, they often found the slightest moments to connect with one another. These gatherings served not only to foster a sense of community but also created opportunities for shared cultural practices. Uniting through whispered tales about personal hardships or shared laughter, the enslaved demonstrated that their spirits could not be entirely crushed by oppressive structures. Having examined the sacred and secular facets of life for enslaved individuals governed by legal frameworks, it becomes paramount to consider these acts as more than mere survival tactics. They were defiant rejections of their relegated status, illustrating the complexities of identity within a world designed to render them invisible. With the exploration of resistance now concluded, we will delve deeper into the cultural practices that arose amid such socio-legal challenges, illustrating how these experiences continue to resonate through the annals of history. Our examination of the interwoven complexities of cultural practices against the backdrop of legal subjugation and social constraints will now guide us to our next focus. This journey will continue to illuminate the everyday realities faced by enslaved individuals, revealing how they formed fragile alliances while upholding cultural identities intertwined with the tapestry of ancient Greece.